important and significant intervention in this initiative is been that we are now tied up with the Central Board of Secondary Education, and we are going to offer this particular course to thousands of students across the country now in the CBSE schools. Students, teachers, principals, and parents. So that is the essence of nonviolent communication. In fact, as Mahatma Gandhi has said that if you wish to have peace in this world, each one of us need to work for peace. That means he underlines the importance of individual action for peace. And in fact, as UNESCO says, that peace is something which is a very dynamic process. It needs long-term. It's a long-term process. It's not that if we do something and there is peace. It's a long-term process, and it needs constant engineering. It needs constant dynamic action on the part of individuals and societies to ensure that there is the culture of peace. And also, it entails constant dialogues, constant engagement, constant meetings, and a whole lot of these issues so that there is peace. So, what
Sorry,
is the
I'm
core?
interrupting you, sir. Actually, I mean, some of the students are saying that your voice is low, and yes, a bit.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think even direct, I mean, without even headphone, you can connect directly with your system. I mean,
What about now?
yes, it's fine now. It's
It
fine
is
now.
fine.
Sir, and a bit, you know, I mean, like I can see you through an angle. So थोड़ा
Okay.
सा straight वो बैठ जाएंगे आप तो
Is it better?
थोड़ा सा और सर थोड़ा सा tilt हो जाएगा. Yes, it's fine now. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank
Yes,
you. Thank you very much.
I'm really sorry for.
No, 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 no. So as I mentioned that as UNESCO points out that peace is something which is a long-term process which needs constant engineering, constant endeavor, and it needs constant dialogues, constant engagement with different stakeholders in the society. So what is the core element which comes out? How we act upon all these issues when we are talking of constant engagement, constant dialogue? It is communication. So communication is the key here. So what should be the communication? Communication is a dual role, as we have probably, if some of you probably have read about the Rwanda genocide of 1992, where thousands and thousands of people were killed in the genocide, and it was triggered by communication, the radio Rwanda radio mile, the local radio station, which promoted those whole enmity and hatred from the Hutsis and the Tutsis, the two communities which were fighting with each other. Whereas on the other hand, communication has a very constructive role. It can bring people together, it can heal relationships, it can promote goodwill and harmonious coexistence. So what should be our goal? Our goal should be a non-violent communication ecosystem so that we can live in harmony, even if there are differences. Like we as human beings will always have differences. So in that context, how we resolve our differences constructively and meaningfully is always a challenge. So it is how we use our tools of communication. If we are aggressive, if we are violent, and if we have a difference or dispute with someone, then it will lead to a breakdown of communication, and that's the end of it. We can't talk. But if our communication is such, which is dynamic, which is healthy, which is nourishing, then it will help in further dialogues. We will not be able to close the channels of communication, and that is something, our goal. That should be our goal for each individual. If each of us are supposed to contribute towards a culture of peace, it is in this context we can talk about the essence of nonviolent communication. And as I mentioned to you that we are running this free online course on nonviolent communication, and the course material is available in our website, www.gandhismriti.gov.in. So you can have a look, and you're most welcome to do this course, and each one of us of you who do this course gets a certificate. Well, let me share with you now quickly through the PowerPoint the whole idea on what exactly is nonviolent communication. And I'm sure you will all enjoy this journey to try and understand it and try and see how we can use it as a strategy in our daily lives. It seems it's showing host disabled participant sharing
Uh,
screen sharing.
yes, yes. Just a sec. I'm just giving you the permission for that.
Uh, is there some way we can do it?
For a sec, I'm just talking to Zubair, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can continue with our, you know, conversation. Is it possible, madam? Uh, okay.
Yes, sir. I mean, just check it out. I guess. I mean, now it's for the all panelists. I mean, they can share their screen.
Okay, okay, okay. I think, uh,
I mean, still having problem?
yeah,
Yes, yes. We got your screen, sir. Yeah, we can see it now.
so I can continue. You
Yeah,
are
yeah.
able to see?
Yes,
Okay,
sir. Yes, sir.
okay, okay, okay. Perfect, perfect. Let me tell you that is this screen visible? This particular slide?
Yes, sir. It's
Okay,
visible.
okay, perfect.
Words to remember. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. That's right. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let me tell you, the whole essence of non-violent communication has a very oriental origin. No, it origins from India. If you see the Indian culture, and if you see the, especially the Buddha's uh, points of the rightful speech, it emanates from there, and also in the modern times it goes on with Mahatma Gandhi being one of the greatest proponent of non-violent communication. So let me start today's presentation with this beautiful quote by Lord Buddha. And he says that words have both the power to destroy and heal. When words are both true and kind, they can change our world. Isn't it? Let us all reflect on this very important quote, because we are always in a relationship with, whenever we are having with our, whether with our friends or kith and kin, or anyone in the society, the words that we are using is so critical. So it can either destroy our relationship or even heal it. So that is the whole essence when we are talking of nonviolent communication. Similarly, we have a very beautiful quote of Mahatma Gandhi: I object to violence because when it appears to do good, the good is only temporary. The evil it does is permanent. So when we are using violent communication, sometimes you might think if you are aggressive and you are hitting out at someone, you have won, and that whole idea of superiority probably comes in. But definitely the harm that it might do to a relationship or to the whole situation, it will be permanent. So that is something always important to remember. Very again, a very very important insight by the famous Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, who says that when we say something that nourishes us and uplifts the people around us, we are feeding love and compassion. When we speak and act in a way that causes tension and anger, we are nourishing violence and suffering. In fact, friends, as students of communication, you know the basic of definition of communication. We cannot not communicate. So every moment of our life, like the food that we are taking or the air that we are breathing, these are essential ingredients of our daily sustenance. Similarly, communication. Please think of a situation if you are not able to communicate with anyone for a long period of time. What will go through your mind? How will you feel? So, communication is as important as the food that we are taking, or the the air that we are breathing in. In that context, friends, please Think of the situation when we are, end up taking some rotten food. We will get unhealthy, we will get ill and sick. Similarly, think of a situation when we are using words and language with, say, with our kith and kin or friend or anyone, very aggressive. We are using all kinds of words that probably is hurting the other person. But think of then when you start recollecting, say after an hour or after some time, then there will be a lot of tension within you. There will be a lot of stress. There will be a lot of anger. So it is not nourishing. You become unhealthy when you are using unhealthy communication, and that is the key to non-violent communication. In fact, the words that we are saying are nourishment. We can use words that will nourish ourselves and nourish another person. What you say, what you write should convey only compassion and understanding. Your words can inspire confidence and openness in another person. Because if we are not open, if we are not flexible, and if we don't show understanding, then there is a breakdown in communication. As students of communication, we all try to see what are the different obstacles to communication or breakdown to communication. So these are some of the reasons when we are totally inflexible, we are not open, we are using all kinds of words and various labeling that we will see further, then there is a breakdown in communication. So in fact, as students of communication, let us get back in what exactly when we are talking about communication. It is how communication, our communication that we are doing, it helps mold our realities, our perspectives and emotions, isn't it? As students of communication, probably you might have realized that. Also, it makes us to feel more connected to each other. It is actually also, if you realize, it is actually a reflection of the inner workings of our mind. Before we communicate with someone, we are most of the time we are thinking ourselves and then we are talking to the other person. So it's a reflection of the inner workings of the mind. So everything that we communicate originates from the contents of our mind. So that is something we need to keep in mind when we are talking of any form of communication in that matter. Here is, let me share with you a beautiful quote. This is a beautiful book by Thai Mazur and Wendy Wood, and they tell that words hold power that can be used to instigate or neutralize any given experience. They can be used as weapons, either offense or defense. We need to be aware of the energy that our language, our words hold, and use them for greater good. So we must realize what is good, what is our style of way we are speaking, the words that we are trying to use. That is, in fact, probably I remember uh, uh, working with some group of students here in Delhi University, and they were trying to do a study on non-violent communication in colleges. Because you're a college, it would be very pertinent to share that. Uh, those students did give what kind of language that generally students use in college canteens, and they covered almost 20-25 colleges, and they found in many of the colleges the college canteens were hubs where the worst kind of words are used, slangs, and you know a lot of abusive languages are used in those. So how we use the language, how we use the words are something very, very important. We must keep in mind. And as students, it's so important because in today's world, each one of us are always in tension. So how we use language, how we use our words and with whom, this needs to be always looked at and realized. So, in fact, that brings us to this challenge to communication today. The increasing fragmentation of society is actually linked to the failure of communication. You see, there is a lot of, as I said, a lot of aggressiveness and the negative aspects of technology, information technology, because words are becoming devalued and degraded, losing their original weight and depth. probably reduced to empty signs and in contrast to soaring volume of information. There are various communication scholars who talk about how the because of communication there is fragmentation of the society, and with the advent of the social media, that soul of what we are talking, it's probably missing. It is very very mundane, it is very very mechanical, there is little soul to soul communication. So those are important aspects that we need to look at. So the challenge hence is how our communication ecosystem can become a source of positive coexistence and creation of values. Because as I said, the whole idea is that how we can all contribute towards a culture of peace. Because if there is a culture of violence, we will ourselves not be able to live in a happy way. We need peace. That's the goal for each one of us. And how each one of us can contribute is the important challenge. We promote soul, and how we promote soul to soul communication, it is something very very important. Only when we get immersed in words that heals and constructive dialogue, that human beings can become truly human. Here is an important person, Marshall Rosenberg. In fact, a lot of work that has been done in the West on nonviolent communication that is attributed to him. And in fact, in his initial book on the language of life, in the 70s, 1970s, when he had written, he had said that he got the inspiration of his work and his research from Mahatma Gandhi's Satyagraha. He felt how he could use Mahatma Gandhi's ideas of Satyagraha to practical use in the contemporary context. And there he talked about nonviolent communication. He traveled across different countries of the world and conducted workshops and all, even in places where there were conflicts, especially when he was there in Rwanda during the Rwanda. Immediately after the Rwanda genocide, he was there to have trainings on nonviolent communication again on for the two varying groups, the Hutsis and the Tutsis. So here, what Marshall Rosenberg says is that it is founded on language and communication skills that strengthen our ability to remain human, even under trying conditions. It guides us in reframing how we express ourselves and hear others. Please let us look at it very carefully. Many times when we are very tensed, there is a lot of problems, we are facing a lot of problems and stress and all, then probably you will realize that our communication uh, becomes very aggressive. We tend to be aggressive. That is the human nature most of the time, many times. Also, so that is important. When we start practicing nonviolent communication, it will help us to remain patient, and even in such trying situations, how we can still continue to remain human and try to handle that situation and handle that communication process in a more non-violent way. That is something which needs to be looked at. Also, most importantly, is that we are all used to talking in a particular form, in a particular way. That is our general, we feel that that is the normal way that we talk to, sometimes using slangs, many times probably bringing in various ways which might hurt the other person. When we start using non-violent communication, it will help us to reframe the way we have been talking, the way we have been reaching out, communicating. It will help us to see how we can do it in a different way, which will not hurt others or which will not break the relationship. That's a key thing. It will help us to reframe on the usual way that we have been used to communicating. In fact, here is this way importance of reframing that I was talking to you about, like how it will help us to guide us to reframe our thoughts and communications. In fact, here is a beautiful quote of Abraham Lincoln: we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. So the same thing that you are talking in a particular way, it will help you to reframe and bring in a different way in which you are going to talk. So that is how it will help the non-violent communication. In fact, Let me now share with you what are the pillars of non-violent communication. For every building, it is so important to have a strong foundation. So, for non-violent communication, here are the five important strong foundation stones or pillars, you can say that. And these are the five pillars of Gandhian non-violence: respect, understanding, acceptance, appreciation, compassion. So, let us see. Let us try to demystify it. Let us make it simple. Respect, it's such a simple thing, like if we start respecting each other, much of the problems that we face in our lives will evaporate, when we respect each other. That's so simple, and that is the mundane thing that we need to do, because as soon as we do not respect the other person, there starts the problem. So respect is something very, very primary important pillar of Gandhian nonviolence. When we start respecting each other, it will lead us to greater understanding, because when we are respecting each other, it will be much easier to understand each other. And when we understand each other, it becomes much easier to accept each other's position. Like each one of us might have a different point of view, but if we are not respecting the other person, not trying to understand the other person, it will be all the more difficult to accept the other person's position, because we think we are correct, not the other person. So acceptance is something very, very important. And acceptance, then we come to the fourth pillar, and the fourth pillar is appreciation, positive appreciation. Friends, many of us are, get engulfed in situations where we have negative emotions and negativity around us, negative energies. We get entrapped into the negativities. Like in the morning we get up and we start complaining, "Ki this is not there, that is not there," whole lot of negative things there. How many times we try to see what are the positive things that are happening with us or happening in the society? Friends, when we start having this thing of habit of positive appreciation, you will realize how it will help you to trigger positive energies around you, because without positive energies you will not be able to do positive work. So positive appreciation is extremely important. Appreciating the good things around you, appreciating the good things that are happening with you or with the other people. Positive appreciation. And last comes the fifth pillar is compassion, trying to understand the suffering of others, the pain of others. So important in today's world. And here, when we are talking of these five pillars, friends, it's so important that we realize it's. I'm not talking about just respect or compassion or understanding of just other human beings. We are talking about five pillars of Gandhian non-violence means res- looking at the whole universe as such, for respect for the nature, respect for the all other living beings. Here, it's so important to understand when we are talking of non-violent communication, the importance of human interdependence. Like we are just one species on Earth, and we must accept the fact that there is nature and there is all other living beings, plants and animals. So the much of the problem that we face today with this pandemic and climate change and all is that probably we have less respect for nature. We are not able to understand nature. We are not ready to respect other living beings. We think we are superior as human beings and we have every right to do whatever we want. So there lies the importance when we are talking of non-violent communication. Non-violent communication doesn't mean just with other human beings, but also how we are communicating with nature and all other living beings. It is all encompassing. And as I said, that we must look at the things from a cosmocentric view of human nature, that we are all part of, human beings are just a part of the entire cosmos, and there are other living things, there are other things that is there in this cosmos, and we need to have respect for everyone. Probably this is something which I uh, wanted to underline when we are talking of non-violent communication. What probably I have also so far talked to you a lot about non-violent communication ecosystem that is healthy, and how we want to have a healthy communication ecosystem, so on and so forth. You might be wondering what exactly is non-violent communication. So that is something very important to know. Probably what whether we want to say that it is an explanation or a definition, whatever. So when we are training people in non-violent communication, we are using the explanation given by this very senior Gandhian, Sri Natwar Thakurji. In fact, he passed away 2 years back, and we are using his perspectives of non-violent communication. He used the Gandhian approach to non-violent communication to frame his own understanding of what exactly is non-violent communication. He says to me, in fact, he says that it is so important in our society today. He needs, like we talk about critical understanding of the media, that is the media literacy. Here he's talking in terms of non-violent communication literacy, critical understanding of non-violent communication and how we should use it. He goes to that level. He says, to me, non-violent communication literacy would mean how our communication efforts should be non-violent, how our ability and capacity to communicate not only with ourselves but with our family and society be non-violent in all aspects, and overall how the entire process of communication, whether between individuals, groups, communities, and the world at large, should be non-violent in nature. Please let us look at it. He, it is an all-encompassing explanation when he says that how our communication system should be, whether it is within ourselves, within our family, or the society at large. Also, he says that this would entail deep understanding of the art and science of nonviolence and its centrality in all their daily actions. It is not just verbal and non-verbal communication. Non-violent communication literacy would also include whether our thoughts and ideas are non-violent or not. Please mark this. It is not just when we are talking of non-violent communication, we are not just talking about verbal and non-verbal communication. As I mentioned earlier, you see, he, our thoughts and ideas, those, everything that is also communication, the inner dialogue, the inner self-talk, but we call it as intrapersonal communication. So even our thoughts and ideas also needs to be non-violent. So it's a holistic approach. It is not just like I may be talking to you and I may be totally non-violent or a healthy communication I'm indulging in, but in my back of my mind I'm probably cursing you or thinking all kinds of wrong things about you. So that is not non-violent communication. So let us be clear about that, because it's a holistic concept. Here, when we are talking about this explanation of nonviolent communication, let us see what are the elements of nonviolent communication, and that will help you if you try to, try to recollect, try to introspect, and try to see how these elements are so important. And let me tell you, all these elements that we are going to talk about, they're all interconnected, they're all intertwined, and when all of these elements come together to develop, help you develop a truly non-violent communication ecosystem. So the first element is non-violent communication means lack of violence. The first important element in the way we communicate with others, whether it is verbal, non-verbal, our thoughts and ideas. That's according to, as we saw from the explanation given by Sri Natwar Thakurji. Because when we are violent in our interactions, we are humiliating the other person. Now, this is so important when we are talking of intrapersonal communication, because intrapersonal communication, let us say, it consists of two important components. That is our inner self-talk, the self-talk, and the inner dialogue. Self-talk is I'm talking to myself. Inner dialogue, it could be something like, say, you imagine you are talking to someone, and that is inner dialogue. You are dialoguing with that particular person whom you are imagining that you are talking to. So here it's so important that is that when our inner dialogues and inner self-talk become very unhealthy or it becomes aggressive, then what happens is that or there is most of the time the chances are that our outer dialogue when we are talking to other, it also it gets reflected in that our aggressiveness. So what is important is that we have to learn to communicate with ourselves. Extremely important, intrapersonal communication, and that needs to be constructive in nature. And As soon as it is destructive in nature, we will have a lot of problems of stress, depression, so on and so forth. And of course, as I said, our problems start there because we become aggressive in our communication with the other people. So, in fact, if we are not ourselves aware, here again, it's importance of self-awareness. If we are not aware that our mind is full of wounds and emotional poison, we cannot begin to clean and heal the wounds, and we will continue to suffer. This is the second element of non-violent communication. Then important is use of appropriate and positive language. It's so important when we are communicating to look at, to reflect on constantly on what kind of words and languages that we are using, because most of the problems that we have with people happen because we don't realize that the words or the language that we are using is wrong. It might be hurting the other. It the other person becomes very defensive, or the other person feels very insecure the way we are trying to handle that particular person with our communication efforts. So extremely important, we need to constantly see how we are trying to, what kind of words or language that we are using. Here is this beautiful quote by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Language is very powerful. Language does not just describe quality. Language creates the reality it describes. We should try to take responsibility of our action, words, and feelings, and not blame others for these. Very important. Yeah. So the next element of nonviolent communication is avoidance of stereotypes. Friends, I'm sure most of us get entrapped into this problem of stereotyping. Persons with disability or homeless. Think of a situation like there is someone's pocket has been picked, and there are a number of homeless people around in the or street children in the street. First thing that comes to our mind most more than often is that कि, अरे this person यही इसी ने किया होगा pocket मार. So stereotyping, what is important in non-violent communication is how we avoid stereotypes or someone coming from some other culture. Many times that happens, no, yeah, like someone say if someone who is from Africa is walking around, so stereotyping कि अरे ये तो ऐसा ही है. So like that actually is an obstacle to proper communication. When we are stereotyping, it leads to breakdown in communication, it leads to disrespect of the other person. So we should not get into this trap of stereotyping, and that is extremely critical element of nonviolent communication. Another is moralistic judgment. You see, say for instance, we will say like our say kith and kin is there, and we are trying to clean the house, and that our sister or brother, she or he may not be doing. So we will say, hey, you lazy fellow, this and that, all kinds of things, blaming. Also, another biggest problem is that if we start making comparisons. "Arey, this person is doing so good, you are not able to do anything, you are simply useless." So that demotivates the people. So what is important is that how we can be non-judgmental in our communication. That is the key. Similarly, avoidance of negative evaluative language, so important. Bhavna ji is a teacher, and probably say some of one of a student has not done well in the classroom, and she will start putting non negative evaluative words. No, yeah, you are simply useless, you simply can't do anything, you can't, you will never be able to pass in the examination. Many times this happens, we just get into these kind of problems. So how we avoid non evaluative language is so important. Like, I will just give you an example. You see, say for instance, instead of teaching mass communication, Bhavna ji is the coach of a college football team, and there is a a student who is not able to score goal for the last 10 matches. So in one side, she might say that you simply need to be thrown out of the team, this and that. But if she says that, well, student, you are really putting in a lot of efforts, and I'm sure with your efforts in the next match you will score a goal. I'm sure that student will get so much motivated, and he or she will be able to, he or she will end up putting in more efforts and do something better. So, how we motivate people with positive words instead of negative evaluative language is the key, and that we need to realize when we are using non-violent communication. Similarly, when we are talking of the avoidance of inappropriate words or language, again, extremely important is how we can avoid being aggressive. Because as we have been discussing that when we are aggressive, then we are leading to a situation where there is a breakdown in communication, because the other person is also going to be aggressive, and then we might end up not having a dialogue altogether. So it's so important that we try to refrain from being aggressive with people, so that you know we don't end up closing the channels of communication. That is something very important. Empathy, extremely important. In fact, I remember one of the former American president, Barack Obama. uh, he had said that what the world is facing is that there is a serious problem of empathy deficit. Most of us don't want to put ourselves into the position of others and try to understand what is going on them, why they're in such a situation, why they're behaving in such a way, what are the problems they're facing. We feel that someone is behaving in such a way and that person is totally bad or things like that. Empathy is extremely important. And how do we get over from this problem of empathy deficit is something very, very important. Because when we are empathizing with other, we can touch their humanness. But the world needs is a true empathy revolution, some kind of a thing, because so important, trying to put ourselves into the shoes of the others and try to figure out what the problem is, what their concern is. That is something extremely important. Empathy, power of empathy, it is another important ingredient of nonviolent communication. Again, we have talked about compassion earlier, trying to understand the suffering of the others. Also, when we are talking of compassion, it's so important how our language, the words that we are using, how much compassionate it is. Also, compassionate listening, how we are listening to the other person is so important. So it is concern for other that arises when we are confronted with another's sufferings and feel motivated to see that suffering relieved. So, in fact, compassion connects the feeling of empathy to acts of kindness, generosity, and other expressions of altruistic tendencies. So, compassion again is an extremely critical element of nonviolent communication. In fact, here we are reminded of this beautiful quote of His Holiness the Dalai Lama: the concern for others is very precious. The more time you spend thinking about yourself, the more suffering you will experience. The incredible thing is that when we think of alleviating other people's suffering, our own suffering is reduced. This is the true secret of happiness. So, it is a very practical thing. The next important element of nonviolent communication is connecting with needs of others. Friends, many times we might have difference of opinion or problem with someone, but how many times have we tried to go down to their level, to their needs level, I'm talking about, and try to understand critically why that friend of mine is behaving in such a way. It is very, very important, because when there are differences or when there is a conflict, when there is a dispute, possibly the other person is trying to behave in that particular way because there is some problem with him or her, there is some issues with him or her. Important is that what is that particular need. We must critically try to understand what is that particular need because of which that person is behaving in such a way. And when we are able to unearth the situation from that needs level, much of the conflicts we will be able to resolve without any problem. So connecting with the needs level is extremely important. Again, two important elements of non-violent communication: flexibility and openness. Possibly sometimes when we are having a problem with, say, a friend or something, we are not flexible. We feel whatever we are saying is correct, not the other person. So there is situations when we have communication breakdown. But if we are flexible, if we are open, we are trying to understand the other person's point of view, even though that person is our adversary, then there will be little chance of communication breakdown. Important Last two important elements of non-violent communication: listening skills. In fact, listening skill more than ever before. In fact, we have been doing these workshops with large number of colleges and universities, both India and abroad. And one of the major issue that comes up is that probably we have forgotten the skill of listening to the other person. Listening skill is extremely important, because we think that we probably sometimes we feel that why should we listen to the other person attentively. We think if whatever we are saying is correct and not the other person. So how we practice active listening and active and deep listening skill, that other person, just imagine a situation. Say for instance, you are speaking to your friend, and that friend, from his both verbal and non-verbal communication gestures, it is clear that he or she is not listening to you. How will you feel? Similar situation, think of yourself in that situation. Similarly, if you are not listening to your friend or kin or anyone, and you are showing with through your gestures that you are not ready to listen to that person properly, then what will that other person feel? They will feel humiliated, they will feel demotivated, so on and so forth. So practicing active and deep listening skill is an extremely critical element of nonviolent communication. And the last element of nonviolent communication is expressions of gratitude. How we can as individuals express gratitude is so important. Thanksgiving, we must try to see how we make it an habit to thank people, uh, whatever they have done for us, or even situations how they have done, to express gratitude. So expression of gratitude is an extremely important element of non-violent communication. So friends, when we try to look at these elements of non-violent communication, and we will realize how important they are. One second. Hello, can you uh,
Am I audible to you?
yeah, yeah, no, can you see me? I'm not able to. One second. Now we have to stop share. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the elements of non-violent communication I shared with you, and something very very important we need to keep ingrained in our within us. Like you see, there is no set formula of how we can practice non-violent communication. It has to come from within, and unless and until we are committed to ourselves, we can't practice it. If we are committed, yes, I will do something, I will try to make my communication ecosystem non-violent in nature, then only we will be able to handle and ensure a proper communication ecosystem which is non-violent in nature. Now I think if there are some questions we can.
Yes, I request our students, if they have any question, they want to ask something regarding this non-violence communication, they have any query, they have any query regarding the online course, which actually sir already talked about. I mean,
Mm-hmm,
he is running, so they can have their query as well. And one thing I just want to ask you, sir, I mean, because as you told, like in some of the college canteens, the
mm-hmm,
research was done in Delhi University, and it
mm-hmm,
is most of the students use, that is kind of slang and all those things. So
mm-hmm,
it's a kind of when we talk to the younger generation, even I mean when we talk of, to our colleagues, so
Mhm.
that comes under in a very informal kind of communication, and most
Mhm.
of the people feel really very very comfortable, I mean, talking in that language. So
Mhm.
basically, yes, I mean, and when we talk about the youngsters, I mean, what I have observed, I mean, that could be my observation. So
Mhm.
I'm not generalizing it. I'm just, I'm
Mhm.
just whatever I observed, I'm just sharing it. That today's generation is actually very aggressive, you know, and
Mhm.
they want things in a very instant manner. What
That's
is
right.
the reason behind it, and how to, how to make them, to think like you have to wait, you should have patience and all those things.
In fact, that is something which is a problem, probably a global issue, in a way that because probably we are too entrapped into this trying to get everything by any means.
Mm,
Whatever we want to. That possibly pushes us to become very aggressive, and possibly that is the reason why much of the problems that we face in the world, and disputes and conflicts that starts. So, what is important is that how we try to control self-restraint. How do we practice self-restraint is something, is an art, and I think all of us need to do, because at the end of the day, when we become too aggressive, when we become too trying to push ourselves to get everything that we want, you will see that many of such people and all, we will suffer from different kind of ailments also, stress factor, depression, because if we are pushing ourselves too hard and we are not getting that particular thing, then we might get into depression, we might get into so many health problems.
yes.
So it's so important that if we are self-restrained, and how we try to practice patience, as you were saying and all, it will help us to stop and be calmer.
Mm,
And when we are calm, when we are patient, then also we are not, we will be less stressful, we will not get into these problems of depression and so many other mental health issues that are there. So everything is directly linked to it. And so in fact, I say that when we are using non-violent communication, it can actually help you to get over many of these issues like depression, stress, or many of these mental health issues could be handled in a more constructive way.
yes. Well, one of the question is from anonymous attendee actually. So he or she is asking, as of current time, there are a lot of news channels who report news in a biased and hateful manner. So why is it that no action has been taken against them by the government?
You see, that is again, in fact, I remember some time back, we have been conducting this workshop for judicial officers, judges and lawyers and prosecutors and all. So in one of those workshops, one of them said that probably more than any one of us, the people from the media needs training in non-violent communication, because the amount of hatred various news channels, whether uh, it likes it, and also especially the debates, the news debates in the newsroom, it looks like a war room. It doesn't look like a debate or dialogue, it looks like a war. it, in fact, it is an important area we all need to think about it. It's such a serious issue, because as I said, communication has a dual role, it can either construct or destruct. And here we are seeing a very, very wrong way in which some news channel aligned to a particular ideology will go against the other groups, and the other channel against with some other ideology will go against them, and it looks like as if some kind of a war has started. So that is something very unfortunate, and we really, all of us as a citizen, needs to think how we can have a more healthy debate, healthy communication in our newsrooms and television, which doesn't, like I said, that Rwanda genocide is a most apt example of how the media can promote violence, and thousands of people were butchered in the streets in different cities of Rwanda. And it was a genocide, of one of the worst genocides of the modern era. So we should remind ourselves on the serious problems that the media can do, and see how we all can contribute to uh, having a media which is more healthier and promotes. There will be differences of opinion. Let us handle it very, very healthy, in a healthy manner. There is no need to
The
create.
media people need to be counseled.
Yes, that is something very important.
Yes, because one of our students is asking that comment on today's journalism. I think they are too aggressive. What's your take on it?
Definitely, it's a big. That's what I said when one of those workshops that we were doing, and those with those judicial officers. There was a remark that more than us, it is the media people who needs to be given the training.
Exactly. One of the student Varsha Singh want to ask that what are the sources of funding on non-violence issues and how we can access it.
Funding,
Funding. Yeah.
funding. I didn't get it.
Like suppose if I mean I think she is talking regarding some project work or something like that. I mean if,
See, there is no funding like that for, like, it has to be an inner kind of a thing. If you wish to probably do something, you can do some initiatives, write a blog on non-violence, things like that, or uh, promote it through the social media, do some research, meaningful research on that. But as such, of course, with the economic situation, I don't think there is a funding situations also there. Like,
one more question from anonymous attendee, and that is oftentimes because of the tiring and stressful days, parents come home and take it out on their kids for some reasons or stuff like that. You know, how do you think we could resolve it?
yeah, that's in fact a question which many of them have been asking, and I remember doing a similar session with the National Law University Jabalpur, and one of those students, especially during the period of lockdown, they he said that, you see, we have five members in the family, father, mother, and what happens is that we get, generally when we are working or we are studying, we go out in the morning and come back in the evening, so there is a lot of personal space. Problem is probably during this time when uh, all of us are in the same house and there is no personal space, and there is quite often we might get into situation of conflicts or differences of opinion, or not able to get our me space. That's definitely when we are practicing non-violent communication, as we have seen, because when we are talking of empathy, compassion, gratitude, also you must see these are not just philosophical statements. The proper psychological studies have been done, like those who practice more empathy or compassionate, or are into expressing gratitude. There is a it's linked to the neurosciences of the brain. And what happens is that you will be less stressful, you will be less depressed, and there will be an increase in pro-social behavior when you are using this. So in that case context, when we are using these tools of non-violent communication, you will be able to handle such situations in a much better way. And this is, as I said, not a philosophical statement, but proper scientific studies have been done in
Mhm.
this.
How, I mean, how to practice this non-violence communication? Because I think, I mean, sometime I doubt, like, you know, when you talk to younger kids or the younger generation, that won't be, you know, a kind of preaching them. I mean, I just worry about it. So,
No,
yes.
it is not preaching. Like as I said, probably keeping in mind its importance. CBSE has introduced it. In fact, I've been told they have started the registration process, and I've been told more than 45,000 people have already registered for the course.
Okay.
So, and I'm sure it is just 4 5 days, in 4 5 6 days, and I'm sure as we go, it could even touch some lakhs. So. Uh, it is not preaching. In fact, one of the module in that particular section is the practical aspects, how we use it for anger management, how
Mhm,
we use it to handle our negative emotions,
mhm,
how we are using it to resolve disputes
mhm.
with, with anyone, with our friends or kith and kud, in a constructive manner. So how we help in promoting dialogues in our society using this. So
I
this
think
is
we
not
can
preaching.
also take some
And also, as
examples of. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also, as I said, there is no formula
Mm,
unless and until you are yourself committed that you want to do some
mm,
this no one can force you to do. And even if you are doing the course, it is not, it will give you an understanding, but
mm.
unless and until it has to come from the inner sense, you are really committed to do, then only it will happen.
Right. So I think, I mean, whenever we are just using language or the abyssal language, I mean, we have to just stop and we have to think again. And
Yes.
yes, because I mean, anger actually harms us a lot
Yes.
rather than others. So that has to be understood, I guess. So, sir, it was a wonderful session, and I mean, so many takeaways for all of us, which you
Thank you.
provided. So,
Thank you.
yes, on behalf of Mass Communication Department of Prestige Institute of Management and Research, Indore, I am highly obliged to you for providing us your, I mean, your valuable time and sharing your thoughts, your experience. I mean, the things which you are actually, living as well, right? So, and it was really a new thing. I mean, for me too. I mean, like non-violence communication. It was quite new thing for me as well. I mean, it was such a wonderful session. So
Thank
once
you
again,
very
thank
much.
you so
And
much.
I we look forward to working with your institution further.
Sure, sure,
Yeah,
sir. Sure, sir.
sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank you.
so much,
Thank you
and
very
thank
much.
you to all
Thank
students as
you.
well. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It was very enlightening
Thank
session.
you. Thank you.